Sorry, I got an allergy pill and I'm getting dry mouth here. Thank you, David.
Did I not introduce myself?
I have to confess that I always feel a little ambivalent about what to say when I prepare my remarks, especially sort of representing the faculty here, although they haven't reviewed any of it, so I got the issue is, how do I address the challenges that face you as teachers today, while exhorting you to embrace those challenges with a Thessalian zeal? What is the proper balance between speaking about the real world of K-12 schools and urging you to strive to reform them? Of one thing, however, I have no doubt: how privileged we all feel, faculty and staff, just to be in the same room with you tonight at this juncture of your career. This ceremony, after all, recognizes and celebrates your official entry to the profession we all care so deeply about. We've worked with you, we know your compassion and your commitment and your courage, and it gives us hope for the future of education in California. And we need hope. It is the condition of education in California and across the country that fuels the ambivalence I feel tonight. Even at this ceremony, where we all, quite rightly, share feelings of joy and pride in your accomplishments, I can't help but worry that what the current reform is doing to the profession I love and what it means to your future. Not that I believe schools don't need reform. Surely they do. It is the misguided and fundamentally flawed direction of the dominant model of reform that troubles me. For more than a decade, policymakers and business leaders have eagerly enlisted in a movement launched by free market advocates with the support of major foundations to reform school through standardized testing and accountability. Some of the nation's largest foundations have been promoting school reforms on principles drawn from the corporate sector without considering or understanding whether they are appropriate for educational institutions. They pretend to be beyond any particular ideology. We are technocrats, Bill Gates recently said. But technology and the set of solutions Gates and his experts, among others, have arrived at are deeply ideological, rooted in the mindset of the market, using test scores as the driving force in their quest to transform teaching. With the vast wealth of some of the world's most well-endowed foundations, they are purchasing the space where dialogue regarding education occurs. The result is that in education, we're experiencing a virulent and coercive strain of groupthink, and it is doing our students a great deal of harm. The rhetoric is all about raising standards, one of those catchy yet meaningless phrases so beloved by politicians and pundits. I mean, who could be against standards? Rarely, however, do you hear a substantive discussion about what standards, chosen by and for whom, and to what end. This groupthink has even moved to justifying itself in moral terms. Education is the civil rights of our time has become the mantra, repeated often by Mitt Romney in the last presidential campaign, as if discrimination, housing, poverty, and voting rights no longer trouble us. Our schools are now more racially and economically segregated than at any time since the 1960s. Low-performing schools, by any measure, almost always serve high-poverty populations, and that has not changed since the onset of the testing and accountability panacea. Furthermore, there is an increasing pressure not to express arguments against this groupthink, especially within the public schools, where teacher evaluations are increasingly based on whether the teacher succeeds at embracing so-called data-driven practices mandated from above. Administrators' careers advance or not, depending on the need for rising test scores. Whatever the raising standards rhetoric, with both the Bush administration's No Child Left Behind and the Obama administration's Race to the Top, testing has become a central preoccupation in schools. Standardized testing has become not just a measure, but an end in itself. And don't think the so-called Common Core is going to be any different. because the Common Core comes with a common assessment. In some ways, both race to the top and the Common Core are more insidious for teachers because of their push to connect teaching performance with standardized test scores. It is impossible, unnecessary, and harmful for a small group of individuals to predetermine and impose upon all students the same set of knowledge and skills and expect all students to progress at the same pace. And if they don't, of course, it's the teachers and the school's fault. I'm not against standards per se, for good standards can serve as a useful guide. But when standards are enforced with high-stakes testing, when teachers and principals are evaluated based on students' test scores, and when a student's fate is decided by test scores, then teaching and learning must inevitably become standardized and constrained. Can you say scripted curriculum and pacing guide? Just take a look at what happened under No Child Left Behind. No Child Left Behind did not require schools to narrow the curriculum, reduce the time for music and the arts, for social studies and science, or for lunch and recess as far as that goes. But it all happened. It will happen with Common Core standards as well. As Bill Ivey writes in his book, Handmaking America, equipping students with the limited skill set required by multiple choice exams does not require inspiration, empathy, or any particular talent. It's an activity that can be implemented by the educational version of, well, clerks. Diane Ravitch, a conservative historian and arch critic of how the standards movement for which she once advocated has been hijacked by testing mania, described a well-educated person as follows. Someone who has a well-furnished mind, shaped by reading and thinking about history, science, literature, the arts, and politics. The well-educated person has learned how to explain ideas and listen respectfully to others. Those are not outcomes that can be measured by standardized testing. And they seem to be outcomes sorely lacking in our political discourse these days. We must make sure that our schools are grounded in the liberal arts and sciences, with plenty of opportunities for children and young people to engage in activities and projects that make learning lively. We must be sure they are prepared for the responsibilities of democratic citizenship in a complex society. There is no evidence that the Common Core will develop well-educated persons any more effectively than No Child Left Behind. Let me repeat that. There is no evidence. It stems from an ideological belief system and set of values. A belief system that ignores the real problems of education, which are social, political, and moral in nature, and whose solutions have little to do with quantitative analysis, no matter how elegant. Quantitative analysis, for example, can verify that consistently low-performing schools almost always serve high-poverty populations. But quantitative analysis is silent as to whether or not this fact is even a problem, much less what to do about it. That discussion goes to what kind of society we want to live in, how best to create it, and how to do the right thing along the way. Standardized testing is not going to help us answer those questions. So, what is a teacher to do in the face of this groupthink? More to the point, what should a graduate of the Kalmanovitz School of Education at St. Mary's College do? Here's the deal. As St. Mary's graduates, you have an antidote to this groupthink plague.
They can't hear you in the back. Move that.
Sorry. You have Lasallian principles of education to take into the schools in which you teach. You understand the critical importance and central role of the student-teacher connection. The need to respect every student. To stand a little in awe at the dignity of each student. You understand that great teaching involves the personal, exquisite extension of one individual to another. Every outstanding teacher I have ever known views teaching as a vocation, as something they were called to do, a profession that has a deeply spiritual dimension for them, whatever their belief system generally. Lassallean principles tell us that education is not only about acquiring knowledge, especially the level of knowledge measured by multiple choice questions on a standardized test. Teaching must address the whole person, body, heart, and soul, not just the intellect. The goal of teaching must be more than preparing young people to become another participant in America's consumption culture. Enter to learn, leave to serve. Our Lassallean credo is the ethos that should undergird our educational policy and our teaching practice. What can you do? You can begin with this. Whether you're in the faculty lounge, at a social gathering, chatting with family and friends, or strategizing at a union meeting, and someone says, and they will, raising test scores is our first priority. Look them in the eye and say, I'm a St. Mary's graduate. I'm a Lassallean educator. Raising test scores is not my priority. My priority is helping students learn how to think critically, think historically, think humanely. My priority is to encourage students to contemplate the way technology shapes their consciousness. My priority is to help students cultivate a sense of social responsibility. I'm a St. Mary's graduate, and my priority is to help students become more fully human. And I mean all students, no matter what they look like, where they come from, whatever their family income or who they love. Because all humans have within them the spark of creation, and shame on me if I forget that. I'm a St. Mary's graduate. I have learned that if I help my students become more fully human, and if I join them in that quest, their test scores will take care of themselves. Thank you.